I'm excited to introduce our next speaker, who is Pradeep Gopal. He's a principal engineer at Target and loves to work on data problems. He's worked with Cassandra and related technology to handle massive amounts of data with IoT, education, in the social welfare space. With Target, he's worked in particular with Cassandra on inventory management and visibility. I have a special place in my heart for Target, having worked with them in the past and sat in war rooms with those guys. And so, without further ado, let's get to see what Pradeep has in store for us. Pradeep, are you on?
Hey, yeah. Hey, good morning, good evening. Hope you're all fine and safe. Yeah, can we get the slides up? Hey, I'll just briefly touch upon a couple of things about why we choose Cassandra, not necessarily a Target even before I joined Target, and what we learned and what are the set of use cases that we built and what are the set of key takeaways. Yeah. Sure. So why we choose Cassandra? Standard answer to that question is because there are tons of data that we would like to slice, dice, and store, and that is true for our case. And 7 years back, when we started looking at data store, we needed something that was fast to read and write, and NoSQL DBs were the best to get going. And Cassandra was the new kid on the block, and so we wanted to give it a try, and that's where it started. It was easy to learn, but I'll tell you more about what we learned and how it happened. It appeared too easy to learn. That's what it initially meant. So it was like, create a set of partitions, pick your partition keys, store as much as data you want, and that's how we all started with it. Yeah. Next slide. So how did we learn Cassandra? Of course, there are a lot of resources available, but it is not simple to use or implement. Just like any framework, any tool, you need to have the experience. You need to spend hands-on. It's not like you read a book on Cassandra and be able to implement something. And if you look at the right side, the curve that you see is the ramp up time on Cassandra seems to be less. It is steep, but it is less. But once you reach the point where you think you know everything that you know about Cassandra, then it takes a good amount of time to master, and the ramp down time is a little longer than what the ramp up time initially is. That's what we learned. So, yeah. So what does Cassandra allow us to do basically? It allowed us to scale data at real big scales, right? Taught us how to store and retrieve large amounts of data very efficiently. And we are able to build the data system around the architecture, not the other way around. And typically what you do is you have a data base, RDBMs typically, and you try to build the architecture. There are cases where I've seen where you cannot do something in the architecture just because your database cannot support that, right? And your system is prepared to basically adapt to various new business cases and use cases as we go along. A set of use cases that we worked on, where I used for the scale was on the IoT platform. It was typically a smart water management system. Used to get data from sensors, 10 million to 100 billion per day. And it's not only that, we also got archived data, which used to be like, we used to get around a billion events in a span of a day or two. And this data has to be sliced and diced across a time series. And we should also be able to do the same thing across hierarchy. For example, when I say time series, I would like to get a aggregation of, let's say, average rainfall in an hour across a given location, and set of the average across the overall geographical location with all the sub-things. And what are the key takeaways that we had from this was redundancy of data is completely perfectly acceptable. Don't be afraid to redesign your data store, because many times we actually have to throw away the entire thing that we have built and rebuild it. And what also helps is Cassandra, right? It helps you design and write your pipelines so that you can handle the data in a better way, right? And design and tune your clusters for writes, reads, and shelf life of the data. So something that data for 1 year old data, you may not really need to have it in your current cluster. You probably can do it in another cluster or another key space, another table. And restrict your partition size and choose your primary key wisely. And this is something very critical, because this is what we found. Restricting your partition size to 100 to 200 MB, right, gives fantastic performance. Again, that's my opinion, that's my experience, right? So what are nice little things about Cassandra? One is it can be a fantastic beast, right? Once you know how to tame it. It is restrictive, yes, but it also opens up various options to represent the same data for your business needs, right? The storage design is driven by the architecture, like I said, not the other way around. And each time that I have used Cassandra for a new use case or something, I've always discovered something, I've also learned something new about Cassandra. Finally, I would like to thank Cassandra Group, Patrick, and the community. And every time we had a problem, we always used to go to DevSec, go through the sessions, go through the slides that were there, right, to learn about Cassandra. Yeah, that's all I had. I'd be very happy to answer any questions.
I'm pretty curious about, and I told him before this, I'm curious about how they're doing inventory systems with Cassandra, because, man, there's so many inventory systems out there, and so sometimes it's hard to group all of those things in one place so that you can, I was talking to some other companies that they were like, if I click and come into the store, I really need to make sure that that thing is in the store, and Cassandra is a great place to centralize that data. So thank you so much, Pradeep, for preparing and presenting today.